Hi there, David Potter here from the Cultural Change Company. Can I just say hello to everybody that's watching, and to say that this is the first time that I've used a video to reach out to my connections on LinkedIn, and indeed to reach out to the broader community of managers and leaders and business professionals that are out there throughout the world. So this is a first for me, and I'm kind of feeling a bit excited about it, a little bit nervous, which I suppose is normal, but good to go. First of all, thank you for listening, and thank you for choosing to give me a few minutes of your time to allow me to share with you a passion of mine, a passion that I care very, very deeply about. And that passion is organisational change, and in particularly, or specifically, change at the level of individuals and at the level of groups. Okay, so my mission, if you like, as a professional facilitator of leading change in organisations, is to awaken in the mindset of managers and within their communities the realisation that they can actually craft the culture that they really want to belong to. Unfortunately, many times, managers believe that they are victims of the culture that they belong to, that they are almost trapped within that culture, and that they have no sense of agency with regards to how they can change it. And for me, that's an absolute myth. It's a really good example of what we call in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, of a acute limiting belief. It's a belief that holds back and limits the potential for personal growth and self-actualization at the level of individual, and then of course at the level of groups. I spent 25 years working in management, 25 years predominantly in the public sector, and also during a period of time in the public sector where change was basically happening everywhere. And I was really fortunate that I got involved in many really interesting and challenging change projects. And as part of that learning development, I get the chance to go to university and study an MBA. And whilst on my MBA, I specialised in change management, and in particular cultural change. And I found it so interesting that I decided to progress to do a PhD. You know, so I'm a bit of a geek. I confess. There's my confession, right? So I suppose my PhD was in cultural change dynamics. It was in organisational development. But I was particularly interested in the way in which managers at a middle management level and at a senior management level co-create a cultural system that perhaps doesn't allow them to be the best version of themselves. A cultural system that sometimes at an extreme level can even be described as toxic. It can be described as disabilitating. A culture that prevents organisational learning, that prevents the opportunity for self-actualization, and basically suppresses and holds back the potential that lies within all of us to be absolutely amazing at what we do, and to get a genuine rush of excitement and optimism every time we go to work. I was interested in how managers actually accomplish this accomplishment. And then, of course, I was interested in, well, how do you give them the skills and the knowledge and the tools so that they can unpack the culture that's holding them back and re-engineer and rebuild a new culture that is far more rewarding, far more liberating, and one where the peacocks and the penguins can all coexist together. And the penguins, if you like, can grow peacock's feathers. So what I'm talking about is a culture that celebrates difference, that celebrates learning, that celebrates authenticity, and a culture where you can be genuine about yourself and you don't need to go into work wearing a mask. So that's my passion. But what I discovered on this academic journey, where I was tutored and led by two arguably are global leaders within their field. One was Professor Jerry Johnson, who is well known within the field of strategic change and pioneered the idea of the cultural web, which is used by major consultancy firms all over the world. And Professor Nick Beach, who specialises in identity work. And I was very fortunate that I spent 5 years unconsciously modelling and learning from these two individuals who were, I believe, masters at their craft. However, when I left my PhD journey and I was practicing my craft, if you like, as a change leader in an organisation, I still felt there was something missing. There was something missing in the repertoire of ideas that I had learned at an academic level. And what was missing was this idea of personal change, of personal transformation, and of taking responsibility for yourself. And the reason it's missing, I think, this is just my thoughts, is that organisational development, or OD as a field, traditionally and historically focused in on group change and on intergroup change to create a broader systematic change in the culture of the organisation. And yet, the more I thought about it, was that as long as we take the view that we have to change the group, then that gives the individual at the level of self a get out of jail card. Where the individual at the level of self can say, it's not my fault that we've got this culture, it's their fault, they need to change, it's just the way things get done here, it's always been like that. And what I realised was that as long as we have that belief system, which is an incredibly limiting belief, then what would happen is the culture will just continue to self-perpetuate itself. And therefore, if an individual changes, and if an individual manager takes responsibility for that change process within themselves, then they can create what we call the butterfly effect. They can create a ripple effect within the broader management team where their new emotional state, their new thinking strategies, their new beliefs and their external behaviours start to get modelled unconsciously by other people, and thus you create cultural change. And I discovered NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And I discovered that within the field of NLP, there were a set of practical tools which I could learn to create transformational change at the level of me, at the level of self. And that I could then use to teach and to train in organisational contexts along with the work that I'm doing in cultural change, so that managers are best prepared to do the analytical process, so let's diagnose culture at work. They are better prepared to do the design process, let's design the implementation programme, but they're also extremely sensitive and prepared to the idea of what are the soft skills that we need as leaders to create change within ourselves that can be modelled by our audience. How do we learn those soft skills, and how do we pass those soft skills on to other people? And I firmly believe that within NLP there is a set of 12 to 14 distinct categories of behavioural change, emotional change, cognitive change, change at the level of values, change at the levels of beliefs, which when integrated together in a training platform or a training programme can actually create an incredibly resourceful package of personal interventions which can be modelled by the level of the individual and can then be taught to other people, and it has amazing effects. You do not need to go into work feeling unhappy, you do not need to go into work feeling dissatisfied, and you do not need to go to bed on a Sunday night putting your head on the pillow and really not looking forward to meeting your colleagues or your staff or your work teams in the morning. you can actually change all of those feelings, all of those attitudes, change all the beliefs that are driving them. And you can do it very quickly and very easily if you know how to do it. And NLP offers you a model for doing that. I studied NLP here in the UK under the leadership of the Scottish Centre for NLP. I studied under Brian Costello and Stevie Burns, who are two exceptional NLP trainers. I was then really fortunate because I travelled across to America and spent 2 summer schools at the University of California, where I studied NLP with one of the co-developers and global pioneer of NLP, Robert Dilts. And they deliver their training at a commercial training centre called NLPU, which is located within the campus at University of California, Santa Cruz. And what I was particularly interested in terms of NLP and Robert's approach to NLP, was the way in which he applied it in the area of business, the way in which he applied it to the area of change leadership and change management. And Robert has developed a model of NLP that he refers to as conscious leadership and resilience. And I found that extremely interesting, because what Robert was saying was that if you want to generate change in organisations, you need to, as Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. You need to be the change you want to see in the world. So you have to learn how to self-calibrate your own emotional states, your own meta programs, your own behavioural states, understand the values that are generating these, understand the beliefs that are generating the values. And you need to ask yourself some really, really insightful and powerful questions. And these questions are these states resourceful for me? Are they resourceful to me as a change leader? And how are they generating an energy field around me which is influencing the choices that people are making with regards to either accepting me or rejecting me as a leader? And that's the essence of conscious leadership. Conscious leadership, therefore, has 2 flows of direction. Initially, you're concerned with change at the level of self. So it's very internally directed. And you're interested in what you could call intrapersonal change. Because if you stop to think about this for a minute, if you can't lead yourself, you certainly can't lead other people. The second flow of direction for conscious leadership is obviously outward, towards other people. And what you're interested in is being able to read, or as we say in NLP, calibrate the emotional states, the meta programs, the behavioural strategies, the values and the beliefs that are essentially being used by other people to create their model of the world. And what you want to do is to understand that model of the world, so that not that you can dominate it, but so that you have much more behavioural and cognitive and emotional flexibility as a leader to be able to handle all those differences that you're going to be encountering out there. So conscious leaders don't come to a situation, i.e. like a transactional leader, and say, well, I'm the boss, we pay you a salary, this is what I want you to do, and the person goes off and does it. Conscious leadership is not concerned with that model of leadership. It's more concerned with the idea of transformational leadership. This idea that I am going to present to you my authentic self. I am going to be connected. I am going to be open. I am going to be very attentive to your needs and to mine. I'm going to be incredibly centered, and I'm going to have the ability to hold very challenging feelings. And together, we are going to create something beautiful and something excellent. That is the aim of conscious leadership. Now, research that's been conducted globally has evidence that anything up to 70% of change programs often fail to realise many of their objectives. Now, that statistic has been knocked about a wee bit, whether or not it's entirely valid. But what is valid is that it's quite evident that managers and organisations know about their own jobs, so they have technical expertise. So that's a tick. We also know what's valid is that managers and organisations understand the structure of change programs, that's a tick. And thirdly, we know that managers and organisations do care.